Sixth grade, happy Wednesday, January 6th. At the top of your page up here, you can write that date, January 6th. And then for extra credit, it's a famous Christian holiday. Tell me what famous Christian holiday happens on January 6th. All right, today we're on to lesson 2, guys. We're talking about the society and culture in ancient China. From lesson 1, we got the first 2 dynasties, guys. Dynasty number 1 was the Shang dynasty. Dynasty number 2 was the Zhou, spelled with a Z, the Zhou dynasty. And we ended yesterday talking about that warring states period where all these aristocrat warlords fought with each other. Now we're going to see what comes out of there as we start to talk about their society and culture. It says, how do new ideas change the way people live? Ideas that started in early China continue to influence today's world, guys. We met Confucius on Monday when we got started with the chapter. Today we're going to get and learn about him. During the period of the warring states, rulers of rival states fought each other. Okay, so you're cruising along in your notes, guys, and you obviously can see they're going to fight each other if we're in warring states. Armies wiped out entire villages of men, women, and children. Many Chinese looked for ways to stop the killing. They wanted to bring order to society. So you can see how bad it got, guys. We're going to slaughter this whole village. And a lot of people would say, well, why would you ever do that? What do the poor children or women have to do with that? If you believe the men are out fighting. And what they would do is they would say, well, I'm going to slaughter one village, hoping that all the other villages just surrender because we don't want to be wiped out completely. So sometimes if you're brutal once, you don't have to continually be brutal. But what was happening is the one army would wipe out a village, and so then in revenge, the army would attack the other army would attack and wipe out some village. And so you were just slaughtering people. And people are saying there's got to be a better way. We got to bring an end to it. So between 500 BC and 200 BC, Chinese thinkers developed 3 major philosophies. They were Confucianism, from Confucius, Taoism, remember that one from yesterday, guys. We got the Tao, the way you're supposed to rule, and what's called legalism. These philosophies were different from one another. However, the philosophies had the same goal. Each philosophy, okay, so make sure you got that, Taoism for number 2, aimed to create a well-run and peaceful society. After decades of war, Chinese people welcome these new ideas. So guys, we have philosophies on how we can live peacefully, completely different. Let's talk about each one of these. Number 3 in your notes, Confucianism was based on the teachings of a man named Confucius. He was born in 550 BC to a farming family. Confucius lived when rival kings fought each other for power. Confucius criticized the misrule of these kings. He urged the people to follow the beliefs of their ancestors. If people would do that, Confucius believed, it would bring peace and harmony to China. So you have number 3 in your notes, guys, of Confucianism, and what his, first of all, you need to understand, he grows up in a simple farming family. He's also living, guys, where there's fighting going on. And if you remember from yesterday, where did we get the soldiers? We got the soldiers from the farmers. We forced the farmers to be soldiers. And so he experiences that and he says, this is not good. We've lost our focus. Our ancestors taught us to live in peace. Our ancestors taught us to take care of each other. You powerful warlords are getting greedy. You're misusing your power, and I'm against that. We got to go back. The picture of Confucius. Let's see how he taught it. Number 4 in your notes. Duty is a central idea of Confucianism, and I love it. Duty means that a person places the needs of family and community above his own or her own needs. Each individual has certain duties to fulfill. It is the duty of parents to love their children. It is the children's duty to then turn around and respect their parents. Husbands should support their wives, and wives should obey their husbands. Above all, a ruler had a duty to rule justly and to set an example for right living. In return, then, subjects should be loyal and obey the law. And so, guys, what I love about this is we kind of misuse that in America. It's my duty if I'm a child to respect my parents. And what we say is, oh, I'll respect my parents only if they do their duty first. That's not what he's saying. He says each one of you should do your duty. So parents, yep, you should do this. And children, yep, you should do that. But what does God tell us? You do that regardless if the other one is doing it. What do we say in America? I'll respect you if you respect me. Now, that's not how God says it, right? I'll respect you. I could care less what you do back to me. I hope you're respectful, but my command is to do what I'm supposed to do. Confucius believed that if each individual carried out his or her duties, society would do well. He urged people to be good. What did this mean? This meant behaving moderately. Moderately means I don't need an excess of things. Okay, in America, we believe in excess. I want the most of everything. Keeping one's promises, honoring traditions, and respecting the elderly. Confucius also advised people to seek knowledge. Now, before I give you his writings, guys, make sure you get in number 5, you're honoring traditions. Respect the past. It's a challenge for us because the world is changing so fast, guys. But every once in a while, we got to slow down and say there were qualities in the past that I need to honor and think about, and it might have changed, and yet there might be some really good parts of it. You think about people hundreds of years ago. They lived a pretty simple life, didn't they? And I might need to slow down and say I should honor simplicity a little bit. Here's his story. By extensively studying all learning and keeping himself under the control of the rules of propriety, which is correct behavior, one may thus likewise not err from what is right. So I might not form an error. This is his book, guys, The Analects by Confucius. To Confucius, the right way to live was similar to the idea known as the Golden Rule. Do unto others as you would have them do to you. We talked about that with Hammurabi and his code of law way back in Mesopotamia. We talked about with Jesus Christ, who gave us love your neighbor as yourself. We talk about Confucius, guys. Almost every ancient civilization has what we call the Golden Rule, number 6. It's just common sense, right? Now, there's a lot that goes into this, guys, and one of the things I always stress as a teacher is saying, love your neighbor as yourself. Step 1 is I have to know how to love myself, and too often we go too fast. Like, well, of course I love myself. Well, I need to know how to properly love myself with all these things so that I can treat other people the exact same way. So I have to be honest in all those things. All right, let's see what he did. Confucius believed that government service should be open to all men and of ability and merit, and not limited to those of noble birth. The aristocrats did not want to open government to more people. They did not want to lose their power. However, over time, Chinese emperors developed the practice of choosing government officials through civil service tests. Okay, so you got number 7 in your notes, guys. This is a huge change. Remember, we talked about earlier this week how it was hereditary. It just passed down through the family. Confucius says that's not smart. What happens if the son who got dad's job is lazy or is greedy or doesn't know anything? You just gave him a job. It should be based on ability and merit. So some poor farmer might be a hard-working genius. He should be running our government. I don't care if he comes from a poor farming family. That should make sense to you. That's Confucius, guys. He started from a poor farming family. Many people honored Confucius as a great teacher. His followers wrote down his sayings and collected them in a work called the Analects. So guys, Confucius did not write this book. His followers did. After Confucius died in 479 BC, his teachings spread throughout China. Confucianism continued to shape Chinese society and government until the early 1900s. Okay, so you have number 8 in your notes, guys, and I will go as saying we're going to see how it had a major role in its government. Today, China has communism, so it's not really Confucius, but it's still very influential even today. All right, next one. Another Chinese philosophy known as Taoism also promoted a peaceful society. The word Tao means path, and it is often translated as the way. Taoism began with the ideas of Lao Tzu. Lao Tzu is believed to have lived during the same time as Confucius. Okay, so you have number 9 in your notes, guys. Yesterday when we saw the word, it was the way. It means the word path or the way. Like Confucianism, Taoism teaches people how to live a good life. Taoists believe that people should free themselves from worldly desires and to live simply. Number 10 in your notes. Sounds a little bit like Buddhism, doesn't it? They should turn to nature and the Tao, which is the spiritual force that guides all things. In this way, they would enjoy a happy life. Taoism is different from Confucianism in some ways. Followers of Confucius taught that people should work hard to make the world better. Taoism taught people to turn away from worldly affairs and to live in harmony with nature. Many Chinese followed both of them. They believed that the two philosophies supported each other. Okay, so number one, I'm going to be worthy, I'm going to get a great education, I'm going to do my duty. That's Confucianism. I'm also going to live in harmony with nature, I'm going to respect it. And so they said I can do both of those. If you want to be critical, you could say, why can't you do both of them? Well, because Confucianism says work hard and be better. Confucianism would get a little bit toward, if I work really hard, I'll have a nice life. I might actually become wealthy. Taoism would say, ooh, stay away from that stuff. Don't get involved in worldly affairs. Don't be worried about what the government is doing, things like that. Just work at living in harmony. So depending on how you twist it, guys, you could say they get along, and if you twist it the other way, you could say they don't really get along. Okay, you have number 11 in your notes, though, on how your belief that they supported each other. Philosophy number 3. A third philosophy stressed the importance of a system of laws. This philosophy became known as legalism, or called the school of law. Number 12 in your notes. A thinker named Hahaze introduced the ideas of legalism during the 200 BCs. Unlike Confucius and Lao-Tzu, Hanfezi believed that humans are naturally evil. So what would these two believe? They would believe humans are naturally good. Strict laws and harsh punishments were necessary to force people to do their duty. Okay, number 13 in your notes. So you can have whatever philosophy you want, guys. I like to think people are good and are going to do the right thing, but also I know that we're all born sinful. So if I look at God and say, hey, we're all born sinful, I might say we're all born, we just don't use that word, right? I might be born sinful, but that doesn't make me evil. Well, it does in God's sight. And so he says the only way to check that is to be really, really mean. Many aristocrats supported legalism. Why? Because it emphasized force. Legalism did not require rulers to consider the needs or the wishes of the people. Its idea led to cruel punishments for even the smallest crimes. Okay, so you got number 14 in your notes, guys, because of the use of force. And what it was is, if I'm mean enough, people will listen to me. That's legalism. Okay, so for instance, I want to go in America today and say, if you steal, you have 1 year in prison. And then I look back and say, man, people are still stealing. Okay, if you steal now, you're going to have 10 years in prison instead of just 1. And maybe that'll work. And if they're still stealing, I would say, okay, if you're caught stealing, you're in prison for life. And see if that works. That didn't work. Okay, if you're stealing, what do some countries do in the Middle East? They chop your hands off. You can't steal if you don't have hands. And so that would be a super harsh punishment. I don't care if you like me or not, right? I'm just going to make the rules. And so the aristocrats, they love that, guys. Why? Because they could do whatever they want. The belief system is, if I just have the right punishment, it'll stop the problem. Now, we know as sinful human beings, guys, that's not true. We have every punishment you can imagine in America, all the way up to the death penalty. Does that stop people from committing those crimes? No, it doesn't. Okay, you can look at it. Do your parents know how to punish you? Yes. Does it stop you from breaking rules? No, does it? Right? And so as humans, we're always thinking, what would be the good punishment that would make a kid behave? I got to have that in my classroom. If I have the right consequence in my classroom, no student will ever misbehave. Well, students misbehave, guys, no matter what the consequence is. And so we just need to understand that legalism, it's logical, it makes sense in my brain, but it's also impossible because we're sinful human beings and we're going to break the rules. All right, let's talk about the life. Early Chinese society was made up of 4 social classes. A social class includes people who have about the same economic and social position. In ancient China, these social classes were landowning aristocrats, farmers, artisans, and merchants. Okay, so big time things in that one paragraph. Number 1, guys, if I ask you to draw a social pyramid, that is a triangle. That is divided into 4 levels. What's on the top? Aristocrats. Second level, farmers. Third level, artisans. Fourth level, merchants. So make sure you have your notes there. It's a little bit unique for us guys that farmers are high up on the social pyramid. And we'll talk why they put them up there as that. But one of it is you supply the needs of other people. A lot of people looked at artisans and merchants and said, you're just after money. That's not noble. Okay? But make sure you understand how to do a social pyramid when it comes to your test. China's aristocratic families were wealthy. They owned large estates and lived in tile-roofed houses with courtyards and gardens. Walls surrounded their homes as protections against bandits. Inside, the fine furniture and carpets filled the rooms. An aristocratic families owned large plots of land. After the father died, a family's land was divided equally among all of the male heirs. Okay, so make sure you understand the gender there. That's number 16 in your notes. As a result, sons and grandsons owned much less land than their fathers and grandfathers owned. So guys, it just looks like this. My dad owns 100 acres of land. He dies. There's 4 sons. We each get 25 acres. Awesome. Now I die. I have 5 sons. That land gets divided, 25 divided by 5. They each get 5 acres. The next generation has 5 more sons. You take the 5, you divide it by 5. Each person gets 1 acre. They just keep chopping up the land smaller and smaller as the generation goes. Now, before that happens, number 1, you might not have that many male heirs. But number 2, I might try to conquer you so that I gain more land. Lives of the farmers. Number 17 in your notes. About 9 out of 10 Chinese farmed for a living. So 90% of the people were farmers, guys. The farmers lived in rural villages surrounded by mud walls. Beyond the village walls were the fields that they were owned by the aristocrats. The farmers rented the fields by turning over part of their crops to the owners. Okay, so the 100 acres is owned by an aristocrat. He lets me farm 1 acre of it. I farm my 1 acre. On that acre, half the crop goes to my family, half the crop goes up to the aristocrats. That's why the aristocrats were so wealthy. In northern China, farmers grew wheat and a grain called millet. In the south, where the climate was warmer and wetter, they grew rice. Most farmers also owned a small plot of land where they grew food for their own use. Okay, number 18. The government required farmers to pay taxes and to work 1 month each year on projects. Projects like building roads. In wartime, farmers were forced to serve as soldiers. In addition, farmers had to face constant threats from famine and floods. Okay, so not an easy life for a farmer, guys. You got number 19 in your notes that they're paying taxes, that they also had to work on projects, and that they were forced to be soldiers despite everything else. And yet that's what most people did for a living because that's how you survived. Artisans are skilled workers who make objects. The artisan of Zhou, China crafted iron tools and weapons, silk cloth, and vessels made of bronze and jade. So you have number 20 in your notes with the word silk. Many were architects, artisans, and woodworkers. Most artisans learned their skills from their fathers and in turn passed them along to their sons. Shopkeepers, traders, and bankers made up the merchant class. So guys, we would look at that and we would think that would be a little bit higher on the social scale. Merchants lived in towns and provided goods and services to the aristocrats. Some merchants were actually wealthy. So why are you on the bottom then? They were not respected members of society. People believed that merchants worked only for their own gain, not for the good of society. While artisans made useful goods and farmers grew food for all, merchants made money for themselves. Merchants were also barred from government jobs. So you have number 22, guys, in your notes. They only work for their own gain. But now you see their social pyramid. Aristocrats, you're wealthy, you own everything. That's why you're at the top. Farmers, you're next. Why? Because number 1, you're 90% of society, and number 2, you're working for the good of society. You're feeding all people. Artisans, you're next because you're also working for the good of others. You're making tools. Merchants, you're just after yourselves. So you're at the bottom of society, even though most merchants would be wealthier than the artisans and the farmers. Kind of interesting. The family was at the center of early Chinese society. Farming in ancient China required many workers, so parents had many children to help them with the work. Even young children worked in the fields. Chinese families took care of those members in need, the aged, the young, and the sick. So just look how family takes care of itself. Chinese families practice filial piety. Filial refers to a son or a daughter. Piety refers to a duty or devotion. Therefore, filial piety refers to people's responsibility to respect and obey their parents. You have 23 in your notes, guys. Who do we look after? The aged, the young, and the sick. You have 24, which was called filial piety. If I could give you some encouragement as we study ancient China, you say, what does this have to do with me? This would be a big thing I'd take out of that. Asian societies still today do a much better job than Americans at teaching responsibility to respect and obey your parents. And think about the ancestors, guys. In ancient China, you just have awesome respect for those who came before us. Today, lots of times we make fun of the elderly. Oh, look at him, he can't walk. Oh, look how this and that. And we kind of tease them because they're not as good as they used to be. That would never happen in ancient times. And guys, it shouldn't happen for us. We shouldn't do those things. God tells us how to revere our elders. And so this would be something we can take out of that. It also requires people to take care of their parents as they grow older. Family members place the needs of the head of the family before their own. The head of the family was the oldest male, which was usually the father. Respect for parents and the elderly were central to the teaching of Confucius. So you got number 25 in your notes. Respect for the parents and then the elderly in general. I love it. Even today, filial piety is an important part of Chinese culture. Men and women had very different roles in early China. Men were respected because of the jobs they did, either growing the crops, attending school, running the government, or fighting wars. The Chinese considered these jobs more important than the work carried out by women. Most women raised children and saw to their education. They also managed the household and the family finances. So, guys, you 26 in your notes. You just have how their society does it. Tragically, America probably does the same thing too. We look at America and we say, a lady, what do you do for a living? I stay home and raise the kids. Really? You don't have a real job? Why would we say it like that, right? Well, you can see that. Sometimes society puts a greater thing on making the money than raising the next generation. China was one of those. Women, we want you to raise the children, make sure they're educated. But we're also going to look down at that and say, well, the men are doing all the hard work, so we respect them a little bit more for that. Probably not a good thing to do because raising children is probably the greatest gift you can give, right? And doing that properly is awesome, but it's the way it goes. Okay, guys, that brings us to the end of Lesson 2. You have some work to do for extra credit to figure out what January 6th holiday that is. Have a blessed day.